Muy buenos días y bienvenidos al último panel de nuestro Fórum Internacional Unthinking the Crisis, Knowledge, Art, Politics. Y el día de hoy vamos a cerrar con una mesa redonda en inglés que de alguna manera retoma todos los elementos planteados a lo largo de todo el foro. Así que muchísimas gracias a todos los que nos han estado siguiendo y muchísimas gracias a la Universidad de Tübingen y al Instituto de Investigaciones Filológicas por ser sede virtual de este tercer foro virtual de la Red Interdisciplinaria de Estudios sobre el Sur Global. Sin más, yo les cedo la palabra a la gente que va a estar en el panel. Primero a los organizadores del, eh, del foro, al doctor Edvaldo González, para que después demos paso a nuestra mesa redonda que va a ser en inglés. Acompáñenos, por favor, para que vamos a hacer el cierre de todo este foro. Muchísimas gracias.
I'd also like to welcome you. Bienvenido a esta, no sé, tabula rotonda, round table. Well, I won't, I will stick to English, it's better. Welcome to this this closing event of the forum. I've participated in a lot of panels, and I think we've had really exciting presentations and discussions. And I would like to thank all those who have contributed to the success of this panel, this forum. Mainly our partners. No, first of all, the organizing team, Edivaldo Gonzalez and Louis Nana, also Bani Gill, and then our partners from all the universities involved, and mostly UNAM, Yvonne, and me gustaría dar las gracias también a todo el equipo de la UNAM que ha apoyado este foro de manera tan extraordinaria. Yeah. I hope I would also like to thank the technical support team at Tübingen, who has done a great job as well. You can see today Johanna Held, there Ann-Sophie Schach and Samira Heimberger as well. Thank you also to all the those who have attended the panels and contributed to the discussions. And I'll hand over now to the organizers.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Gumegu. And hi to everyone. On the behalf of the organizing committee, that is Bani Gill, Edivaldo Ramirez Gonzalez, and myself, I would like to thank all of you who participated to this event, because it could have not been possible without your participation. And we had very fruitful exchanges on the topic of the crisis, and from various positions, that is epistemologically, disciplinary, and also geographically. So we want to really thank all those who presented something, their research, would share their thought on the subject, and professors, but also mainly doctorate student. So we want to thank them for the presentation. We also want to thank those who did a keynote, and we had 3 keynotes, and from English language, Spanish, and French. So we try to represent the languages of the network, and we hope this worked, and we are really glad that we were able to do that. So all our partners in Africa who could attend from Africa and from with the equipment, for example, we were able to have in our partnership with Dakar or Abidjan. We were able to connect with them there. And we also want to thank Professor Gumegu. We cannot end without thanking you, because you were also of a great support with your advices and your encouragement. It wasn't easy to organize 2 weeks conference, and it takes energy, it takes faith, confidence, and we need all the way we needed someone to push us, and you were the person, one of the person, and the person who did that. So we want to thank you, and thank also your collaboration, like Sebastian, who also encouraged us, and Russell Vespavlov, who also encouraged us. And we also want to thank our assistant support. You mentioned Johanna held, but we could not do it without Samira or Anne-Sophie, and who spontaneously helped us, and also those who chaired the panels. We had to ask people to help us chairing the panels, and people took to their times to help us, like Ibrahim Ndiaye who help us, and you also, Susanne Gumegu, Professor Susanne Gumegu, you could even change your planning to chair the keynote in French, because I wasn't able to do it because I had a seminar to teach. So thank you very much for all those who participated in the success of this event. The partners, UNAM has been already mentioned. UNAM had been deeply involved in the organization of this event. So we are sure that the last roundtable will be as fruitful as the past panels and roundtable has been. We even had students who attended the roundtables on proximities, and also on the cultural object, African cultural object in Germany. So with that, and it was a pleasure to work with Bani and Edivaldo. I learned a lot from Edivaldo. He has much experience as I do. I think with the experience of UNAM, UNAM has a lot to teach us. And I really learned a lot, and it was a very good experience. So thank you very much. And I give you back the word, Frau Gumegu.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was really a pleasure to have all these panels from different continents: Africa, India, Latin America, etc., and different countries in these panels. I just saw Jean-Marie Kouakou, who is joined from Abidjan. I will just say for those who are on the round table, you can see those who are linked via Zoom, and you don't see those who follow the broadcasting at the YouTube channel of UNAM. Yeah, so there is a larger public than the one you see at the moment. And I think we should now start. The topic of this roundtable is the role of universities in political crisis. And to start, I will briefly present the 4 persons who will discuss. Unfortunately, Danai Mupotsa from WITS, who was announced, cannot participate because she is in hospital today, or has been in hospital for a couple of days, and she's not able to participate. So we have 4 discussants, and I start presenting Professor Dr. Fernando Resengi, who is a cultural media scientist at the Universidade Federal Fluminense in Rio de Janeiro. He completed his mestrado at the Universidade Federal de Minas Gerais, obtained a doctorate in media studies at the Universidade de Sao Paulo, and was a postdoctoral researcher at the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. After this, he has been visiting professor. Well, he was appointed to UFI and was also visiting professor at the Université de Perpignan in France, the University of Tübingen a couple of times, I'd say, and the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico. He was, or he is, no, the project is finished, our BMBF DRD network futures under construction in the Global South, and he was team leader on behalf of the UFI, and we really built a great cooperation, I dare to say. His research focuses on studies of communication, the narration of conflicts, the narratives of the diaspora, critical cultural studies, journalistic discourses, alterity, Latin America and the Middle East, Global South theory, etc., etc. I can't mention everything. He has created at UFI the Travessia, a Center for Global South Studies, and we cooperated in a joint DRD PPP CAPES Probral project, Discomforting Territories, Images, Narratives, and Objects of the Global South. He has published numerous articles and book chapters on Brazilian media coverage and representations of the 2003 invasion of Iraq and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and on theoretical issues related to communication, journalism, culture, and the otherness. You see someone very well prepared for the topic of our forum. Next, I won't explain the order. I go on with Bakary Sarr, who is Associate Professor in Comparative Literature and Francophone Studies at the Université Cheikh Anta Diop in Dakar. He holds a doctorate in comparative studies or literature francophone comparée, which is mainly on Belgian literature. He holds this doctorate from the University of Liège. He was afterwards appointed to Université Cheikh Anta Diop, UCAD. He's also a member of the International Society for Intermedia Studies, and since 2017, director of the Superior Institute of Studies of Arts and Cultures at UCAD. He's also team leader of the BMBF he was also team leader of the BMBF Network Futures under construction. And he has allowed me to talk also about his political career. He is a member of the Mouvement des Cadres de PASTEF. The PASTEF is a party that was founded in January 2014 in Senegal by young professionals from the public administration. I take this from their website. From the public administration, the private sector, the liberal professions, the teaching profession, and businessmen, most of whom had never been involved in politics before. PASTEF is the legitimate aspiration of an entire people, crystallized by a generation deeply convinced of the gravity of the situation. And he has been a candidate for the mayor at his home community at the last elections, and let's say he obtained a very good resultado, but he didn't make it to be mayor. So fortunately, we have him here in science and academic discussions. The third person is Salah Punatil, who has done his master's in sociology from University of Hyderabad. He has pursued with a PhD from the Center for the Study of Social Systems at JNU. JNU was also one of the partner universities in our network, but cooperation with them has become much more difficult due to the political situation in India. Salah Punatil is, he did this PhD on identity and conflict, a study of intercommunity violence among Marakayar Muslims, Mukuvar Christians of South Kerala. And he is nowadays permanent faculty member at the Center for Religious Regional Studies at the University of Hyderabad, and was a postdoc research fellow at the Max Planck Institute for the Study of Religious and Ethnic Diversity in Göttingen from 2018 to 2020. So his research interests comprise ethnic conflicts and violence, migration, citizenship, Muslims in South Asia, and the intersection of archives and ethnography. He has published a lot of articles in important journals, and everything. He received the M.N. Srinivas Award for Young Indian Sociologists. And I just would like to mention his recently published book, Interrogating Communalism, Violence, Citizenship, and Minorities in South India. Welcome, Salah Punatil, as a new member to our network. So, and last but not least, Professor René Ramirez Gallegos, who obtained his master in government and public policy from the Facultad Latinoamericana de Ciencias Sociales in Mexico, and went on with postgraduate studies in quantitative methodologies at the University of Michigan Ann Arbor, US. Did then, I think, a second master in economic development in the Institute of Social Studies at the Erasmus University of Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and did his PhD in sociology at the University of Coimbra in Portugal, so never two degrees from the same country. And one of his main research topics is the study of time. And he has contributed to develop a new approach to one of the central themes of Buen Vivir. We invited René Ramirez not only for his academic career, but also because his large experience in the political sector. He was, I will just mention that he was National Secretary and Minister in the Ministry of Planning and Development from 2008 to 2018, and Secretary or Minister of Higher Education, Science, Technology and Innovation from 2011 to 2017 in Ecuador. President of the Council of Higher Education, President pro tempore of the Council of Science, Technology and Innovation of the Union of South American Nations. So he's got vast experience in the political field as well. And he is currently a visiting professor at the University of Tübingen with the Global Encounter Scholarship in the Department of Romanistics and under the management of the Baden-Württembergisches Brazilian and Latin American Center. Okay, welcome all of you, and we will now go to I will explain you. I have asked them to give us short statements on the topic, and we will. This is a mostly English panel, but it's multilingual. And so there is a PowerPoint giving some translations. You should be able to see it now. Can you see it? Okay. So I go on here. And the first question I asked them was what kind of political crisis you're referring to when you're thinking of what universities in your country have gone through or are going through in the past or presently. How does this crisis impact on university? Fernando, please.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Well, before reading my short statement, I want to congratulate everyone who is involved in the organization of this forum, right? I mean, it's a very important forum, and we've been doing this already for a long time, so it's fantastic to see it happening. I want to thank you, Suzanne, and also the organizers for inviting me to be here with you all and seeing people I like very much and I haven't seen for a long time. So it's very nice to see you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be with you. Also, before reading the statement, just saying shortly that I'm not involved in, and I don't study political sciences or involved in managing political crises or dealing with them or studying them. Of course, as a professor at the university, we go through these crises once we are directly involved in them. So my statement is very short and brief and very much based on my experience as a professor in a place where I believe crisis is something kind of systemic, which is something we deal with every once in a while. So this is part of what I just wanted to say first of all. So I'm going to read what I said. I don't know if you have translated to French or anything like this. No?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is translation in Spanish and in French, so people can follow what they want. These are DeepL translations, but I think they work more or less.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Well, okay, then Brazil has faced and in many ways continues to face a political crisis of a very complex nature, given the fact that as well as having economic components, it has been riddled with memories of the dictatorship, a past in historical terms that is very recent, not only for Brazil, but also for the whole of Latin America. The legal parliamentary coup d'etat that took place with the impeachment of President Dilma Rousseff, this was in 2016, and which 2 years later helped put in power a leader whose speeches and actions are the basis of a racist, misogynist, and homophobic thinking, to say the least, was terrifying and absolutely compromised the most urgent agendas around health, education, culture, and social welfare. This process, which we also went through together with the COVID-19 pandemic, which killed around 700 people in the country.
700,000.
700,000 people in the country, has equipped extremely important public institutions with the same discourses and actions. This happened, for instance, with FUNAI, which is responsible for taking care and demarcating the territories of the country's indigenous peoples. All this meant a major setback in terms of public policies that had been implemented in previous years, putting at risk populations and lives that have always been the most precarious in Brazilian territory. All of this, for sure, has had a very strong impact on Brazil's public universities, as much of what we had already achieved in previous years also suffered setbacks, such as the radical reduction in scholarships, the scarcity of resources for research, the freezing of professors' salaries, and perhaps even more serious, the radical reduction in federal public financial transfers for many of the services that are essential for maintaining the university. So
Thank
this is
you.
my statement for the first question. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. And we'll go on with Bakary. Bakary?
Oui.
OK.
Alors, la réponse que je voulais donner en remontant un petit peu le temps, j'allais juste commencer par le fait que dès la création de l'université en 1957, l'université Cheikh Anta Diop s'est engagée dans un processus d'africanisation qui a fait que le personnel occidental, le personnel français, le personnel africain était très souvent en conflit. Et naturellement, en 1962, l'une des crises majeures que le Sénégal traverse, c'est la crise entre Senghor et Mamadou Dia, une crise au sommet de l'État qui a eu des conséquences à l'université parce qu'une bonne partie des étudiants à l'époque qui sont devenus professeurs ont été condamnés, les uns à perpétuité, les autres ont été condamnés à 20 ans de prison. Et donc, ça a créé justement au sein de l'université des fractures assez importantes pour le fait que, naturellement, de plus en plus, le personnel africain s'affirme et veut occuper l'espace, plus donc le personnel occidental qui est garanti ici par l'État se retrouve de plus en plus à l'étroit, et les crises donc ont abouti vers les années 1983 à la création du syndicat des enseignants, le SAES, qui a engagé donc le combat pour l'autonomie de l'université, mais également le fait que cette autonomie devait s'appuyer sur une sorte de remise en cause d'un certain nombre d'acquis que la France avait à l'université, qui continue d'ailleurs, mais que le syndicat a essayé à tout moment de combattre pour essayer naturellement de retrouver son autonomie. Le deuxième élément que je voulais signaler également, c'est que l'université aussi a traversé des crises politiques. L'une des crises, parmi ces crises, on peut retrouver par exemple la dévaluation du franc CFA en 1994, qui a propulsé un petit peu le processus de ce qu'on appelle les ajustements structurels. Alors, l'ajustement structurel piloté par la Banque mondiale et le FMI a voulu donc réduire de manière drastique les dépenses de l'État d'abord, ensuite les personnels des universités, tout en imposant à l'université la manière dont la gouvernance universitaire doit être faite. Cela a créé justement cette tension entre, d'une part, le syndicat qui devient de plus en plus fort dans le sens où de plus en plus, ils revendiquent l'autonomie de l'université et les franchises de l'université, mais également le syndicat des enseignants, le syndicat des étudiants vont porter cette lutte, et donc ça va aboutir en 1994 à cette dévaluation, à l'ajustement structurel, mais également entre 1994 et 2013-2014, l'université va traverser encore d'autres formes de lutte, d'autres formes de crise qui font que naturellement des grèves d'étudiants, des retards dans le paiement des enseignants, des retards dans le paiement des bourses, mais également dans une sorte de crise infrastructurelle qui a fait que naturellement le calendrier académique a été complètement déstructuré, et donc le fait aussi que l'université continue de dépendre entièrement des financements de l'État a fait que naturellement, du point de vue politique, l'État a essayer de neutraliser de contrôler l'université par une sorte de politisation à outrance de l'université. Et donc, naturellement, ça a créé cette tension permanente entre les syndicats des enseignants et naturellement les autorités académiques qui sont tout simplement sortes d'exécuteurs de ce que l'État veut, parce que les recteurs étaient nommés à l'époque, il n'y a aucune autorité à l'époque qui était élue par les pairs, et donc tout cela agit un peu dans la manière, dans la gouvernance de l'université. Alors, d'autres crises également ont traversé l'université. Parmi ces crises, on retrouve 1988, par exemple, la grève de 1988, la grève de 1989, qui a abouti à l'année blanche, 88. 94, il y a eu également une année invalidée. Et donc, toutes ces crises qui sont liées au fait que, naturellement, l'État cherche toujours à contrôler et à neutraliser un petit peu les vérités de rébellion au niveau de l'université, tout cela a abouti naturellement à cette crise. La dernière en date, c'est au mois de juin 2023, lorsque l'opposant, qui est mon leader politique, je dois signaler que dans 10 ou 15 minutes, la Cour suprême va donner son verdict pour savoir est-ce que le leader politique de l'opposition va être radié des listes électorales ou alors, donc le Sénégal peut basculer à tout moment. Et justement, au mois de juin, suite à l'arrestation de ce leader, eh bien, le Sénégal a traversé naturellement toutes ces perturbations qui ont lié au fait que l'université a été aussi le théâtre de violences inouïes. Et depuis le mois de juin, l'université a été fermée jusqu'à aujourd'hui. Il n'y a rien, il n'y a pas d'enseignement. Les autorités sont contrôlées par l'État qui ne veut pas ouvrir les universités. Et donc, naturellement, d'un moment à l'autre, le Sénégal peut encore basculer dans la violence parce que tous les jeunes sont en train d'attendre que le verdict soit donné. Ce matin, la CEDEAO a donné le verdict pour la dissolution de notre parti. Mais il reste naturellement là ce que la Cour suprême va décider de l'avenir politique du PASTEF, de l'opposition, et naturellement le destin que l'université va donner aussi à la suite politique, puisque tout dépend naturellement de ces décisions. Et à partir de ce moment-là, le conflit ou la situation sociale sera de plus en plus tendue. Les violences peuvent recommencer, mais si on un autre verdict, naturellement, ça va aboutir à la stabilité du pays. Donc, l'université est encore l'université est dans le théâtre, et le théâtre continue d'être le théâtre de ces conflits et de subir naturellement l'influence de la crise sociale, de la crise politique.
Merci beaucoup, Bakary. I hand over to Salah Punatil. Salah? Yeah. No?
Hello, hi everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers, Professor Susanne, Banikil, and several others who have involved in this series of events. And it's been a great pleasure to be part of this, joining with scholars from different parts of the world on this very important topic. So to begin with, in fact, the kind of issues that are happening in India it has a lot of resemblance in the context of other countries as well as presented in the earlier two sessions, two speakers' points. To begin with, in fact, I would like to place here that there are two major factors that has structural factors, systemic factors that has been quite influential in the in determining the current situation of universities in India. First is the neoliberal economic policies, and secondly, the majoritarian politics in contemporary time. Both of these processes has been unfolding for several decades, but it has been particularly last 1 decade. Tremendous changes have taken place in India in general and also in universities in particular. So one of the major impact of the larger structural transformation has been the changes in the institutional structures, the university structures. So, for example, especially the majoritarian politics in India, since 2014, after the right-wing political organization took over the power, there has been a conscious attempt to intervene in the university spaces to impose the ideologies of the current political organization and make a drastic transition in the way in which university functions. So, so one of the major consequences of this was the structural changes in the university, like administration of the university has been changing because the current political regime particularly tried to kind of change the structure by giving a lot of power to the those who sit in the top positions of the university are largely coming from the right-wing political background. So the direct consequence of this was the curtailing of the freedom of expression in the universities. So almost all sorts of protest and resentment against the existing power system has been met with confrontation by the administrations in the universities, even leading to violent form of repression. And if you look at institutions like Jawaharlal Nehru University, JNU, and my own university, University of Hyderabad, has been particularly affected by this when students have, protested, even faculties protested against some of the policies of the current state. So, but this also coupled with the politics of religion or Hindu nationalist politics, because in JNU, for example, when students have protested and against certain forms of policies of the state, they were targeted by the state, and some of the students were even jailed. And there was a clear communal dimension to it, because students coming from minority background, minority Muslim religious background, were particularly targeted and arrested and jailed and charged with repressive laws. And there are still even people who are living inside the jail after after being detained. And also in India, some of these factors are aligned with other kinds of structural inequalities, like say caste issues, gender issues, issues related to sexual minorities, and so on. For example, in University of Hyderabad, one student, Rohit Bumla, committed suicide a few years back after he was punished because of the protest that his organization has conducted in the University of Hyderabad. So the suicide of the students led to massive protest and violent confrontation within the state repressive agents like the police and also the university administration. And you will see like similar pattern across the country for last several years, that whenever there are resentments and protests by the university students, it was almost always combated with violent forms of repression by the state. So this has been a larger shift in the context of the political crisis in India. Secondly, there has also been tremendous transition in the educational system in terms of the curriculum, in terms of the classroom teaching, in terms of educational policies in the universities, as a consequence of the clear policies of the neoliberal capitalist transitions, the marketization of education, and more exploitative market system has kind of directly impacted the way education has been formulated in the current situation. This was specifically reflected in terms of how the marginalized section, the say students coming from diverse social backgrounds such as lower caste, tribal communities, and minorities, were particularly affected because of the kind of increase in the fees, increase in the fee structures, the rising cost of the education in India. So there has been a clear exclusion and inequality emerging in response to the kind of neoliberal educational policies in the country. And also there has been a drastic cut of the financial support to the educational institutions in India. And this has, again, directly impacted students coming from poor backgrounds and students coming from different social backgrounds. Finally, there is also a trend in India where you will see a lot of private universities coming up with investing a lot of money and allowing students who are coming from the richer background to be educated well. And then there is a clear negligence as a consequence of this negligence of the central universities and state universities. And you will see the decline in the infrastructural facilities, negligence in terms of the standard of education in these public universities. So in India, on the whole, the public universities are under tremendous pressure, and also there is a clear disintegration of the public universities as a consequence of the policies of the state in contemporary time. I think I'll stop here. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It was very thought-provoking what you were saying. It was not exactly the same as what you had sent me before, so I didn't go on with this translation. Okay, so but here we are, and I'll hand over to René Ramirez, who will speak in Spanish.
Muchas gracias por la invitación, Edivaldo, Susan, Ivonne. Es un honor poder estar con ustedes. Voy a ser muy esquemático en el marco de que funcione la reunión. Lo que voy a señalar es algo que se trabajó en estos últimos 2 días en la Conferencia Regional de Educación Superior, y creo que une lo que se ha señalado. Entonces voy a leer muy esquemáticamente. El mundo vive una crisis de acumulación, concentración de la riqueza y cambio hegemónico. La crisis de acumulación, la concentración y la posición regional frente al cambio hegemónico hace que la luna de miel neoliberalismo, democracia representativa se haya agotado. América Latina vive una nueva ola de golpes institucionales a la democracia, como se ha señalado. El neoliberalismo no convence, sino domina, y lo hace violentamente. En la región, en los últimos lustros, el asedio a la democracia ha implicado el asedio a las universidades y a la ciencia. No es casual que en Argentina, Milei, actual candidato que compite este domingo contra Massa, quiere eliminar el CONACYT, que es la oficina, el Consejo de Ciencia y Tecnología de la República Argentina, del Estado argentino. Que Bolsonaro en Brasil haya recortado presupuestos para la ciencia y la educación, por ejemplo. O que Daniel Noboa, futuro presidente de Ecuador, también haya ofrecido en campaña electoral cerrar el Ministerio de Educación Superior, Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación. Tampoco es fortuito que hayan salido grupos poblacionales defensores del terraplanismo, esto lo menciono adicionalmente, o los antivacunas, o que el peso de la política de la religión, como los evangélicos o los pentecosteses, hayan adquirido relevancia en algunos países. Este asedio a las universidades y al conocimiento científico ha hecho que en las propias sociedades de América Latina, en unas más que en otras, se hayan instaurado un criterio, una crítica a la validez de la ciencia y a volver a reivindicar el dogma religioso. Por ejemplo, Esta pregunta que voy a señalar proviene de la encuesta mundial de valores que se hace prácticamente desde hace 4 décadas. En la pregunta, siempre que la ciencia y la religión entran en conflicto, la religión siempre tiene la razón. Y si es que vemos la respuesta de desacuerdo o muy desacuerdo, América Latina tiene un 52%, China tiene 94%, Alemania tiene un 85%. Pero lo peor de todo esto es que el dato en la región de América Latina en los últimos años se ha empeorado y ha disminuido un 37%. En los otros países creció 75% y 12% respectivamente. Resulta problemático también que el estudiante universitario, y esto también como un tema adicional a lo que se están viendo, haya tomado un posicionamiento de derecha con valores poco democráticos. Así, por ejemplo, mientras en el 2014 el 21% de los estudiantes votaba por la derecha, el 26% lo hacía por la izquierda. Entre el 2017 y 2020, el 39% votaba por partidos de derecha y 22% votaba por partidos de izquierda. Pero vale la pena señalar que entre el 2017 y 2020 se presentaron en este caso candidatos con tintes incluso fascistas. En la consulta pública de ayer de la Conferencia Regional de Educación Superior de UNESCO, que reunió a 50 investigadores universitarios para evaluar lo sucedido en el campo de la ciencia, tecnología e innovación y reflexionar sobre los retos de este campo, se puso en el centro de debate la relación conocimiento y democracia. Uno de los postulados que planteé en este marco fue que para defender la ciencia hoy en día en la región hay que defender la democracia. Para defender la universidad hay que defender la democracia. Y para defender la democracia hay que defender una ciencia, una universidad democrática que recupere la naturaleza pública de la misma, de la ciencia y de la universidad, y que se vincule con las humanidades. De nada sirve tener profesionales de alta calidad si son indiferentes ante el cambio climático, ante las desigualdades, ante las muertes prematuras de familias pobres, ante la ola de violencia. Necesitamos una ciencia con conciencia, pero también una ciencia sensible. Yo me quedaría ahí en el marco de lo que envié. Muchas gracias.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we can. Maybe I divided your your contribution in another way. So I just wanted to go on now with the second question I asked was, what can universities do in order to overcome crisis or find solutions to get out of the crisis? So this would be the next part of your what can university do? Or did you?
Okay.
Yeah.
En ese marco, ¿qué puede hacer la universidad? Bueno, primero lo que tenemos que hacer, antes que nada, es defender a la misma universidad, ¿no? Porque generalmente las universidades, ¿no? Son las primeras en ser asediadas cuando llegan gobiernos de derecha o estos gobiernos neofascistas, como se les suele señalar. Pero en el marco interno de la universidad es necesario trabajar en algunas aristas. Primero es superar el epistemicidio que se suele señalar, ¿no? Como bien se afirmó anteriormente, ¿no? La Universidad Periférica Latinoamericana nace con la colonia, ¿no? Nace del reinado, de los reinados y de la iglesia, por lo tanto nace patriarcal, y el colonialismo es el sustento del capitalismo, ¿no? Pero en este marco, superar el epistemicidio es tender puentes para que pueda haber un diálogo con otros saberes. Es necesario abandonar la universidad napoleónica. No podemos ser únicamente una universidad que transmite un conocimiento, generalmente que viene del norte occidental, ¿no? Y no poner énfasis en los temas fundamentales de generar conocimiento para los problemas propios de la región. Es necesario propiciar la generación de sistemas tecnodiversos como condición de la defensa de la biodiversidad. La universidad también, si es que uno es autocrítico, ¿no? A lo interno, obviamente, como señalo, primero es necesario defender la universidad, pero tenemos que al interno también ser autocríticos. Ha sido un instrumento de construir una modernidad que también ha matado la diversidad cultural que tenemos y las diversidades tecnológicas que también se tiene en nuestra región. Es necesario volver a recuperar estas tecnodiversidades para no construir temporalidades, monotemporalidades, sino pluritemporalidades, ¿no? Otro tema que es fundamental es generar infraestructura que coadyuve a la soberanía cognitiva, ¿no? Nosotros no podemos tener en este capitalismo cognitivo que la información se almacene en el norte global y que no tengamos nuestra propia infraestructura para almacenar en términos de las computadoras, del cable submarino, en temas de la misma nubes, ¿no? Que es donde se almacenan esta información. Es necesario auspiciar la ciencia abierta sin caer en perspectivas funcionales del capitalismo cognitivo, ¿no? Esto es fundamental porque a veces se habla mucho de ciencia abierta, que hay que hacerlo, ¿no? Acaba de salir un documento muy importante que revela que las 5 editoriales más importantes a nivel mundial tienen ingresos mayores a lo que genera la industria del narcotráfico, ¿no? Entonces es necesario, algo está pasando ahí cuando tenemos que recuperar el sentido público de la ciencia y el conocimiento. Romper con los procesos generadores de la tragedia de los anticomunes, y eso implica discutir sobre las normativas, como por ejemplo la de propiedad intelectual. Laizar el debate público y defender el rol de la ciencia en la búsqueda de la verdad. Ya he señalado que en el debate público muchas de las veces se está teniendo debates más dogmáticos y en las cuales societalmente se está retrocediendo en el valor de la ciencia en el debate público democrático, ¿no? En la sociedad del dogma no puede haber deliberación pública razonable y sin esta no hay democracia posible. No obstante, si la disputa de la transformación social está en la democracia, la universidad debe no solo tener como objetivo formar profesionales, que los tiene que tener sin lugar a duda, sino también ciudadanos democráticos y sobre todo seres humanos sensibles. La sensibilidad como parte del proceso de búsqueda de la verdad en proyectos políticos antidemocráticos que estimulan el odio a través de recuperar las identidades para dividir, ¿no? En donde se estimula el odio al otro como estrategia de acumulación, implica epistémicamente recuperar quizás la raíz de la pedagogía latinoamericana, que desde mi punto de vista es del sentipensar, ¿no? Desde mi punto de vista de lo que es esa pedagogía latinoamericana. Es decir, la universidad debe eliminar el sentiricidio cognitivo, ¿no? Para poder volver a recuperar el sentido del otro. En este marco se pone en el centro de los objetivos de la universidad la necesidad del retorno de las humanidades y las artes para corazonear el dolor del otro y la otra como parte del proceso de hacer la realidad y disputar la defensa de la democracia.
Thank you so much for this statement, which really closely links university and democracy. And I'm sure Fernando will follow on this.
Yes, okay. So it was very nice listening to the other colleagues and what René has just said about the link that René has just made between democracy and the role of universities is really very important. I think it's a challenge for us all to defend university in times of political crisis. And in Latin America, I go along with René. This is something we really have to deal with all the time. So I also have just written such a short statement following Suzanne's recommendation of being quick and short for us to talk afterwards. So I'm just going to read briefly. In the case of UFI, through the rector's office. It means the politics of the rectorship that was taking place at the time of all these crises, not only the crisis related to the right extreme government we had, but also the pandemic. Many partnerships with other public and private organizations and institutions were activated. This was very important for UFI in order to be able to overcome somehow the crisis that we were facing all the time. So, for instance, dealing more closely with the city hall in the city where UFI is, so the main campus of UFI is, was a very important action. So this was a way for us to face crisis and to minimally put forward agendas and actions which are essential for the survival of the university. This also allowed us to come to the end of the extreme right wing, and I say end in quotation because we're always afraid of this coming back, as also when René pointed out what is happening in Argentina and Ecuador. So we see that there is something going on in Latin America, if we think it this way. But this has allowed us to come to this part of the end of the extreme right-wing government and the pandemic with minimal conditions to somehow take back some reins of the process, not only at the universities, but also the democratic process. And I also call the attention for a very specific point that very much touched me in terms of teaching and of what we are facing in Brazilian universities nowadays, because it's a very interesting to see the strength of the public policies, of the affirmative policies that were implemented by left-wing governments that were in charge before the 2016 coup. For example, the implementation of affirmative actions and affirmative policies in the early 2000s is nowadays responsible for a very large part of what public universities in Brazil are experiencing in terms of social, cultural, and political progress. People who were previously excluded from the country's public university education system are now in the universities. So I'm talking about 20-year experience already. And they are raising issues and guiding fundamental actions for the development of education in a country that has always had social inequality as one of its major obstacles. So what I'm saying here in this last part, in the second part of my statement, is the fact that these public and affirmative policies has played a very important role in overcoming what René has also pointed out as the epistemicide. So there has been a great change in terms of political and the educational curriculum in the universities that is related to what was done in the early 2000s. So we overcome the crisis also with something that had happened before. This is very important because it also helps consolidate a bit more what is very fragile in Latin America, which is a democratic process. So I'm pointing out this action that was taken before for us to understand how much this can somehow, in a long historical term, help us go through certain political crises that we have to experience. So I'll stop here and then afterwards we talk. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Fernando. I would now ask Bakary and Salah whether they want to add something regarding the question, what can universities do to overcome crisis?
Alors,
I just Russ had promised me to come and to help translating, but I don't see him, so I don't know whether someone else might translate Bakary from French to English or whether I have to do it myself. Go on, Bakary, I'll manage.
OK. C'est bon, Suzanne?
Oui, c'est bon, vas-y, j'essaie de traduire, hein.
Alors, je dois donner la bonne nouvelle. La Cour suprême vient d'annuler la radiation qui a été annoncée et donc le pays est en train de jubiler.
Okay,
On
this
va pouvoir
is
donc se présenter à l'élection présidentielle.
okay.
Ça,
This
c'est
is great. Yeah, I just translate. This is great news. Ousmane Sonko is allowed to participate in the next elections.
Donc, ça va contribuer à stabiliser le pays
Hmm?
et à trouver une solution à la crise actuelle.
Hmm?
Alors, l'autre élément que je voulais également donner, c'est que en traversant ces crises cycliques depuis des années, l'université a été obligée de trouver une solution ou des solutions pour continuer à fonctionner parce qu'on était arrivé à un blocage suite à ces crises et à des retards des années qui n'étaient pas terminées. Alors, parmi ces solutions à la crise, l'État du Sénégal a initié en 2013 ce qu'on appelle la concertation nationale sur l'avenir de l'enseignement supérieur.
La conservation nationale sur l'avenir.
Concertation nationale sur l'avenir de l'enseignement supérieur.
Ok.
Suzanne, je te laisse traduire ou je
Oui,
continue?
de l'enseignement. Non, laisse-moi traduire. As Bakary already mentioned, crisis is something which always comes back in Senegal. He was talking of cyclical crisis. So universities had to find solutions in order to continue to work. He mentioned all these academic years which could not be finished, finished too late, the academic calendar is not respected anymore. So this is a very non-working on a very elementary level. And so in 2013, an organism has been created, the national consultation on the future of university teaching.
Alors, au moment de l'initiation de l'organisation de cette concertation, toutes les couches de la société et les différents acteurs de l'enseignement supérieur, aussi bien que les acteurs de l'espace syndical, politique, société civile, tous ces acteurs ont été invités et ont travaillé par commission pendant des mois sous la présidence du professeur Souleymane Bachir Diagne. Et à la fin de ces différentes concertations, le professeur Diagne, avec son équipe, a rédigé un rapport avec, naturellement, qui contient 78 mesures phares qui permettent de sortir, disent-ils, l'université de la crise actuelle. Alors, j'ai essayé de prendre quelques-unes de ces mesures. Parmi ces mesures, je prends par exemple la mesure 16, qui consiste à séparer les campus sociaux et académiques dans leur gestion. Alors, je dois préciser que justement cette séparation ne semble pas régler le problème. Parce que tout simplement, aujourd'hui, la situation dans laquelle l'université est plongée est liée d'une part au fait que le campus social où les étudiants sont logés n'est pas ouvert et le directeur de ce campus qui est directement, justement, qui reçoit directement les instructions de l'État, du pouvoir, n'ose pas ouvrir le campus social au risque que, au prétexte que si les étudiants reviennent dans le campus, les violences vont encore recommencer. Et donc, l'ouverture du campus académique est aujourd'hui largement dépendant de l'ouverture du campus social. Ce qui fait donc que les étudiants ne peuvent pas arriver dans l'espace, dans le campus académique pour faire le cours parce qu'ils doivent à la fois se restaurer, se loger. Et donc, cette séparation a créé justement ce blocage aujourd'hui. Ça, c'est un. Deuxièmement, je prends la mesure 24 qui dit faire l'audit des bourses et réviser le système d'attribution des bourses d'excellence et des bourses sociales. Dans le système actuel, il y a deux types de bourses. Il y a les bourses normales qui sont un peu issues de la sélection en partie de critères de l'âge extra des étudiants. Et donc, la majorité de ces bourses n'arrivent pas à couvrir l'effectif des étudiants. Il y a un deuxième type de bourse qu'on appelle les bourses sociales qui ne sont pas payées chaque mois et qui sont payées peut-être à la fin de l'année et qui permettent de soutenir les étudiants qui n'ont pas des bourses normales. Alors, le problème qui se pose, c'est que vu l'effectif de ces bourses, de ces étudiants, la fourchette, la facture de l'État est tellement lourde que chaque mois, il y a des retards et donc des affrontements au niveau de la police, entre les policiers et les étudiants. Donc, la question des bourses continue, même si ça a été édicté comme mesure, continue de bloquer, de retarder un peu le système éducatif. Je prends également l'augmentation des droits d'inscription tout en accompagnant les démunis. Les droits d'inscription ont été augmentés suite justement à l'instauration du système LMD, la réforme LMD depuis 2012, ce qui a permis naturellement de donner à l'université des ressources additionnelles tout en permettant justement de pouvoir gérer un certain nombre de dépenses que l'État n'arrive pas à supporter. Donc, il y a des fonctions de service, il y a des dépenses, ce qu'on appelle des dépenses qui sont tirées directement des droits d'inscription des étudiants et qui permettent, n'est-ce pas, de régler un certain nombre de problèmes d'équipement. Alors, je prends rapidement...
Bakary, excuse-moi, c'était 3 minutes pour cette deuxième question.
Je termine.
Oui.
Alors, je termine par une dernière mesure qui concerne l'internationalisation de l'université, justement. Il faut promouvoir la mobilité et encourager ce qu'on appelle la coopération universitaire sud-sud qui permettra justement à l'université d'ouvrir au monde africain d'abord, mais également au monde international pour l'arrivée et la sortie des étudiants, la mobilité des étudiants et des enseignants. Voilà.
Okay. Merci beaucoup. I try to be very brief in translating. So in this consultation on the future of university teaching, all parts of society, all actors have come together under the direction of the of Suleiman Bashir Diagne. They have decided 78 measures to sort out university of crisis. And Bakary just mentioned 3 or 4 of them to show that this not always works. So there's, for instance, measure 16, which should divide the social campus and the educational campus to better resolve problems. But in fact, this is what nowadays makes problems, because in the actual situation, so the UCAD has been closed since June, and we don't know at the moment when they will reopen. And the director of the social campus, so accommodation and all the social services for students, refuses to reopen because he's fearing that students will protest again, but they can't open the academic campus without housing the students. So this is a crucial problem. Another problem is the scholarships. There are two types of scholarships, and money is not sufficient and is often paid late. So you have confrontations between the police and students who want to get their scholarships. The third one was an augmentation of the fees for enrollment, which came together with the reform to the, well, let's say to the Bologna system. And the fourth point he mentioned, I think this is very interesting in our context, is the idea that internationalization should be focused or more focused on South-South relations than to the usual North-South or the orientation to Europe. Yeah. Salah, do you want to add something?
Sure, I'll be very brief. I have three broader points to mention when we talk about the way forward. So first of all, if you look at the history of India after independence, you will see that some of the landmark events and major positive social transformation have been directly connected with the political protests inside the university campuses. So a lot of movements that has emerged in campus since 1960s, 70s until very recently have influenced even the policies of the nations, whether it's regarding gender or caste-based inequalities or other sorts of larger social problems. So I think from the perspective of the crisis in India in current time, and perhaps will be useful in other countries as well, the kind of creating a space for larger political protests across the country is something that is need to be done, and this is already reflected in the current scenario, because we have seen in India that student organizations which were otherwise not collaborating began to collaborate, like say left political organization collaborating with student organization coming from minority concerns, and students coming from different caste background or feminist organizations aligning with other organizations. So this has been taking place in India, and this is reflected in the election processes in the universities in the recent past. So this larger coalition of students who have common concerns coming up against some of these repressive political processes in the current time is much needed. Secondly, one of the major features of India's university has been the space of cultural diversity, because India is an immensely diverse country with students coming from different cultural backgrounds. So there is a tendency to homogenize the educational system in the current scenario, be it in terms of class homogenization or homogenization of the language and so on. So this has to be resisted, and the universities need to ensure the diversity in terms of linguistic, religious, ethnic, and cultural differences. So, the homogenizing tendency need to be resisted through accommodating the diversities in the country. And finally, there's also a need to internationalize the sort of concerns that is taking place in academia. Especially academic space in India is shrinking, freedom of expression is curtailed, so it needs to have a lot of creative dialogue and conversations, and intellectual freedom has to be ensured. This has been a major crisis because, as I mentioned in the previous conversation, that even professors who speak outrightly against some of the concerns in the current political system has been even jailed in the country. So one is, of course, to have collaborative attempt within the country to ensure academic freedom, having dialogue, etc. But I think international platforms gives a much more validity to this sort of attempt, that there is, I mean, things which we can't talk within the nation. I mean, there are constraints to speak, but then when this gains certain kind of international significance, and if there are spaces to collaborate with institutions and universities which have similar concerns, this will give a lot of opportunity to engage critically on some of these crises that are happening in a contemporary scenario. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to all of you. I knew before that it would not be possible to sum up what you said, and a lot of things have been mentioned. I just, in order to get the public a bit to remember some of the things you said, I will start by showing you what I had prepared before from the written statements I had. I was just precising, well, the type of crisis and the historical dimension varied in the statements. For Brazil, it was mainly the Bolsonaro period, even if you started a little bit earlier. So this was, and this was a more specific crisis, right-wing. You also mentioned neoliberalism, I think. Together with the pandemic, you also pointed to the structures that have overcome from dictatorship. But this was and you said the end of the crisis. Yeah? Even if one cannot be sure that it will never come back, this is a more precise case. For Senegal, Bakary made up really the close connections between politics and universities since its foundation, and which are very much involved in the decolonization process, and so also are part of the conflict between European university system and Africanization of this system of the professors, etc. And he then pointed to the very current crisis where university gets the place of protest for students who are not who don't agree with political decisions that are going on. And he now added these things which are much more linked to student life experience, an ongoing crisis also when they really have to struggle for their scholarships. I noted for the case of India that there is a transition from university at a space, from academic liberty to political, to nowadays a political restriction of academic space. In many things, I think comparable to Brazil, and I see also what is also very what has been mentioned very much both by Fernando and by Salah is the dimension of social inequality, be it due to caste, to gender, or to race, that impacts on university. Questions of exclusion, inclusion, etc. I see some other, well, yeah, and the other thing, and this would already be a question, there's a dimension of oppression, very clear, articulated by Bakary and by Salah. But there's also the question of in how far neoliberalism also represents a question of oppression. René Ramirez gave us a larger view on Latin America, several countries of Latin America, and he mainly stressed that the assault on democracy has involved the assault on universities and on science. So there's again a very close relationship between politics and university, the freedom of university. We had that in several statements. I found quite interesting also Salah's referring to private universities. That might be another issue of discussion. What's the role of public universities? What the role of public universities in your countries? Can they help to escape political? Can private universities help to escape political oppression? And I then noted several times the question of knowledge, which knowledge can be produced at university. René spoke of epistemicide, or the capitalismo cognitivo, cognitive capitalism. I think these are very thought-provoking terms we could discuss about. I will stop here, and I think there are only 20 minutes left. I would ask those who are on the panel whether they want, on the roundtable, whether they want to react to something what has been said, or whether we shall open the discussion to the public and take questions from the public. And I'd say, because of the time, if Fernando wants to talk, he would.
No, on the contrary, I thought it would be interesting to open to the public.
Yeah. René?
Sí, voy a hablar en español y entiendo que quizás Joana va a ayudar a la traducción, ¿sí? Bueno, sí, muy rápidamente. ¿Es necesario analizar el asedio que existe a la democracia? No, con la crisis del capitalismo, ¿no? Porque a veces parece ser que solo está en el ámbito de lo político, ¿no? Y claramente hay una crisis del capitalismo que viene de la mano de una acumulación de la riqueza, ¿no? Y también con un tema fundamental para América Latina, que es el cambio hegemónico y la relación entre Estados Unidos y China, y el rol que tiene en este caso la relación de Estados Unidos y China con América Latina, en el marco de sus divergencias de modelos de especialización entre Estados Unidos y China, ¿no? En la cual Estados Unidos se da una reprimarización y China se da una tecnificación, y cómo ahí en ese marco América Latina vive un proceso que afecta a la universidad de desindustrialización, ¿no? Y de lo que yo le llamo servificación de bajo valor agregado, que genera servificación en términos, Joana, de servicios, ¿no? Cómo se da un proceso de los manufacturas se transforma y se va transitando hacia temas de servicios de bajo valor agregado, en donde se genera un cognitariado precario, ¿no? La acumulación del capitalismo, ¿no? Actual, ¿no? La parte positiva queda en el norte, la parte negativa queda en el sur global, y se empieza a dar, en vez de competencias entre empresas, competencias entre trabajadores precarios, por ejemplo, entre el taxista y el uberista, ¿no? Generando un modelo que complica, que podríamos llamarlo un modelo de exportación indirecta o incorpórea de fuerza de trabajo a través de las maquilas, o lo que ya había dicho, servicios precarizados de este cognitariado, ¿no? En donde justamente, y con esto termino, también viene aparejado con esta crisis del capitalismo, en el caso de América Latina y a nivel mundial, se recupera la renta a través de el tema del narcocapitalismo y el capitalismo digital, lo que a su vez está afectando, ¿no? A cuál es la misión misma de la universidad en el marco de ese cambio de régimen de acumulación, ¿no? Que está viviendo, ¿no? Entonces, de repente vive un cambio la acumulación a nivel mundial, y América Latina está con los patrones del siglo XX, ¿no? Cuando realmente se está dando una transición muy radical, en donde el mismo objetivo de la universidad en términos de formación y de producción científica entra en crisis, ¿no? Perdón, Joana, pero no sé si es que alcanzaste, pero estoy a las órdenes de poder ayudarte.
Okay, thank you, René. I will try to translate. He said that it's very necessary to analyze the all causes at the university in the frame of the crisis of capitalism. So sometimes we only see the crisis of capitalism in the frame of the political, but the crisis of capitalism is because there's an accumulation of richness, and there's a hegemonic change, which includes the United States and China, and especially the relation of United States and China with Latin America, because there are divergent models between the United States and China. And China is mostly like the technification, and this affects the Latin American process of the desindustrialization of the universities. So the positive part, he said, like, stays in the global north, and like the negative parts go to the global south, and like their competition between the precarious workers. So I don't know, the example was like the taxi driver and I don't know, someone else.
The platform Uber, Cabify.
Yeah, like Uber drivers and taxi drivers are competing in the global south. So the competition and like the negative part is concentrated in the global south, like with this precarized services. And then this affects like the mission also of the university in this framing of the change of regime of the accumulation. And this change of regime is on a global level. So the object of the university in forms of formation and of professionalization is also in crisis. I hope I translated it right, René. If not, please correct me.
Thank you so much, Johanna Held. So we can take now questions from the public. Yeah, the 8:30:56. Is this Jean-Marie Kouakou?
Bonjour, je ne sais pas si vous m'entendez, c'est pas le professeur Jean-Marie Kouakou.
Ah, ok.
Oui, j'ai occupé son ordinateur et je t'ai levé tout à l'heure. En fait, j'avais juste quelques préoccupations que je voulais soulever. Ce ne sont pas des questions, mais ça peut en même temps soulever des questions. Donc, si vous le permettez, en fait, il s'agit de l'engagement des intellectuels. Le professeur Bakary Sarr a soulevé un certain nombre de questions et cela m'a amené à faire un constat. C'est qu'en général, enfin, pour l'exemple de la Côte d'Ivoire, nous avons 3 types d'intellectuels. Il y a des intellectuels qui s'engagent et qui souvent sont contraints à l'exil. Il y a ce premier type d'intellectuels. Il y a d'autres aussi qui refusent de s'engager. Ils sont neutres. Ils sont là, ils ne disent rien sur la question politique ou des crises. Ça, c'est le deuxième type d'intellectuel. Le troisième, il y a ceux qui soutiennent les dictatures. Ils savent, ils connaissent la vérité, mais ce savoir qu'ils ont là, ils le mettent au profit, ne pas dire au compte des dictatures. Ça, c'est les 3 figures d'intellectuels que j'ai soulevées. Mais en même temps, penser la crise ou la table ronde que vous êtes en train de débattre m'amène à soulever une autre question, c'est penser la crise. Comment soigner la crise? Actuellement, je participe à un projet sur le projet Paix pour le Sahel. Il s'agit, n'est-ce pas, d'un projet piloté par les États-Unis, mais comment penser ou endiguer le Sahel au niveau de la Côte d'Ivoire ici? Et votre sujet m'amène à postuler pour un sujet, c'est-à-dire penser la crise dans tous les sens du terme. Merci beaucoup.
Yeah, thank you. I'll try to translate. So it was more a comment on the positioning of intellectuals in these cases. And he observes that in his country, the Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, there are 3 types of intellectuals: those who are engaged, take political positions and have to exile. Then the second type would be those who don't say anything. And the third type are those who work for the dictatorships. And I think this could sum up all of you, I think, presented universities in the role of giving space for critical knowledge on politics. But maybe there might be other types, and political regimes tend to reduce the space and try to install intellectuals which are more in their sense. So this is something I'm adding. And then he said the question is really, and this is a word game in French, penser la crise, to think the crisis, but also to heal the crisis. How can this be done? I think we should take now Louis Nana.
Thank you very much, Professor Gumegu. Thank you for all the panelists, the professors who shared their experiences. I have a question for our participant from of South America, and also from India. In your statements, I had the feeling that the crisis is of course political, and it touches the society, and the university stands as a counterpower against this whether it is in French we say ultra-nationalist, ultra right, should we say?
Yeah, maybe right-wing, yeah.
Alt-right wing. Mm-hmm. And my question was, does that mean that the university is unanimously speaking against the political power? Is there no crisis inside the university as a place of struggle also of ideas? Because Bakary made it clear that in Dakar you have this different position where the power try to make the university politically correct, and you also have those who stand against, and the university is shut down because of this, and it's clearly a place of crisis. Is it not the case in Ufe and maybe in Hyderabad, or from your point as a researcher, but also at the political actors, Mr. Ramirez? Thank you.
Can I reply, Suzanne?
Yeah, go for it.
It's a very interesting question, Louis. Because, well, first of all, I think what I was saying, I think also someone mentioned that we deal with a cyclical crisis, and I would say also a certain systemic crisis. And that means that crisis goes all over from all places. When we're thinking about, at least we think about Brazil. I think this is a lot to do with Latin America too, because it's to do with the relation with democracy. So I think I tried to say that in my first statement was the fact that what Bolsonaro brought us back to was the problem and the memory and the horrors of dictatorship. So when it comes to a crisis like this, a political crisis, we most of all have it spread all over, because this is what we kind of live in every day, in the present, and also in memory. And about this, what I'm saying is that this makes us perhaps understand how much these conflicts, they are also internal. For example, the public universities in Brazil have always had the role of playing a very important political role in the country, which is against the rightist government, which is against dictatorship. But this does not mean that everyone in the university is against all that. And when we have, for instance, a kind of a government that we had, which is Bolsonaro, when we start seeing this system equipping universities with the rightist discourses, so we somehow start having to fight with this problem internally. So I think this is what you mentioned. There is an internal conflict, and we have to deal with it. So some macro systems, some macro politics, many times prevents us from working. I think I can give a very direct example. I coordinate a big international project in which I involved the University of Dakar, of Senegal, UCAD. I involved UCAD in the time of our political crisis in Brazil. And this was something very difficult to do, because everything I had as a macro structure was to say, no, universities from Latin America, universities from Africa should not be involved in this partnership. The right government only wanted universities from the north. I managed to insert universities from Latin America, Mexico, and University of UCAD, the UCAD. Okay, I was happy with this, and I planned everything to go to Dakar, to go to Senegal. And then suddenly there was the crisis in Senegal, which prevented me to go to Senegal. So you see, these crises, they are so systemic and so cyclical everywhere, that they many times prevent us from doing the politics of working South-South, for example, which is a main issue for us here. So there are these internal conflicts, because the system is equipped with discourses that comes from the macro structure that many times prevents us from working politically the way I think we need to in terms of Latin America. I don't know if I replied to everything you said. I want to be quick because I want everyone else to speak.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And time is running to the end. I said we have to end at 1:45, so I can't take any more questions. But I can ask, I mean, the question, Louis Nana's question was also addressed to Salah Punatil, to René Ramirez. So if you want to answer, please go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Can I speak?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll be very brief. So to respond to the question regarding the response of the...
Oh, sorry, your connection has gone. Maybe you could deactivate the camera because we can't really hear you.
And can you hear me now?
Yeah, now it's okay.
Am I audible? Okay, I'm keeping my video off to ensure the connectivity. So, so the response to the crisis is not uniform, and within universities, you will see that when a new, I mean, especially after the right-wing organization took the power in the country, there was a clear attempt to impose their vision of politics across the country, outside the universities, and of course inside the university. So, and universities in India has always been a site of protest, whether this is whether the issues related to national, regional, or international concerns, especially on political issues such as violence, discrimination, inequality, and so on. So, but there is also, like, on the one hand, there is always a critical response to the crisis. There is also equally representation from the university that would support the power political regime. And you will see that after the new, in 2014, after the right-wing political organization took over, they have tried to appoint their own spokespersons and supporters in the higher official position in the universities, including vice chancellors and other administrative positions. And you will see a large number of them actually working in tandem with the state. So university administration working along with the state, and anybody who would, within the university, who would protest against the policies of the state or the policies that is implemented by the university in tandem with the state, then they are penalized. So there is always a counter strategy from the state and also from the university administration. In fact, there are universities in the country where you will see that hardly any protests take place because almost everybody in the university would, in the administration, those who are in the power in the university would completely support the state agendas and policies. So it's not that entire universities or universities in the country would fully protest against something, but it varies. And there are few universities like Jawaharlal Nehru University, JNU, and Hyderabad, which is historically known for a very active, vibrant politics with critical sensibility and active movement. So such universities are particularly targeted by the state because they know that these universities has the potential to unsettle some of the discourses happening in the country, and they are specifically targeted. And there are universities which are protected by the state because it actually works for the state or work in tandem with the agendas of the state. So it's a very complex process in the context. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Last remark by René Ramirez.
Muy buena pregunta. Voy a dar desde la perspectiva de la parte política y la parte económica, ¿no? Para el caso de Ecuador y también para algunos países de la región, suelo decir, la universidad en el caso de Ecuador estuvo tan en crisis que no se dio cuenta que estaba en crisis, ¿no? Desde su misión como universidad. Pero aquí se dan dos partes. En la parte democrática, la universidad está en asedio, ¿no? porque se le busca como institución que deje de jugar ese rol de defensa de derechos y esa perspectiva de la universidad en tanto un bien público, y se busca privatizar a la universidad, ¿no? Y se busca que silenciar a la universidad, ¿no? Pero por el lado de la acumulación, por el lado más económico, y aquí viene para mí un tema fundamental, la Universidad de América Latina juega un rol sistémico al sistema de acumulación capitalista, ¿no? Como parte del engranaje de lo que se suele denominar la reproducción de la tragedia de los anticomunes. Por eso no es suficiente con defender la universidad pública gratuita y masiva, ¿no? Sino es necesario también defender el gobierno de los conocimientos, ¿no? Que implica tener una postura frente, por ejemplo, a cómo se produce ciencia, se distribuye y se apropia a través de las instituciones de propiedad intelectual, ¿no? Entonces, y ahí la Universidad de América Latina prácticamente sigue jugando un rol reproductor de un sistema del capitalismo cognitivo, ¿no? Porque sigue teniendo una perspectiva napoleónica. Yo me quedaría ahí para no avanzar en los siguientes puntos. Muchas gracias y muy buena pregunta.
Yeah. Thank you. Translation?
Sí, translation. Sí, o sea, René is talking about the case of Ecuador and other cases of the region. And he says that university is so in crisis that it does not realize that it is in crisis. And there are two parts. The one part is from the institution, and that the institution is like it's sought as the defendants of rights as a public good, and that it's looking for privatization or to privatize and to isolate the university. But then there's the economic part, and that in Latin America it plays a systematic role, and that there's this tragedy of anticomunes, and then it's not enough to defend the public university, but also the government of knowledge and how knowledge is produced and how it's contributed and how it's spread. And so the university in Latin America still is playing the role of this, or is playing in this system of cognitive capitalism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much. And I think what really has or stays with me is university is deeply involved in the production of knowledge, and so this really means we have to think of integrating different types of knowledge in our curricula. And I hope that this international forum in its way, I come to a close very quickly, can contribute to give a space to different knowledges, and also to enhance the South-South relations, even if Tübingen plays a certain role in this. If I'm looking to the public, I'd say there is much South-South, and all this roundtable, it didn't come to my mind to invite someone to speak about the role of German universities in political crisis. So thank you very much to all of you, and it has been a pleasure to discuss with you, to see you again, and I hope we will continue with this international forum. Thank you again to the organizers. Thank you mainly to the discussants. Thank you, Fernando, and have a good flight. Thank you, Bakary. We will see the day after tomorrow, and celebrate the Supreme Court's decision. Thank you, René Ramirez. We'll stay in contact. Thank you, Salah Punatil. I hope we'll meet in person in a not too long future. Thank you to the organizers, to the technical support, to Johanna Held for translating, thank you to all of you and have a nice evening. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Susanne. I just want to thank
Thank you
everyone.
very much.
But I'm going to conclude the International Forum in Spanish for the
Yeah.
public in Mexico. Yeah. Bueno, a nombre de todos los integrantes del International Forum, a todos los que participaron, a todos los ponentes, a las keynotes que tuvimos, les agradecemos muchísimo toda su participación durante 2 semanas. Así que damos por concluido este International Forum y los esperamos el siguiente año. Muchas gracias a todos y nos vemos el próximo año. Cuídense mucho.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Gracias. Adiós.
Gracias a todos. Chao. Bye.
que nos den lecturas proporcionales.